All right, so today we're going to talk about the nervous system. And to start with, we have the central nervous system, and that's like the brain and spinal cord. But then we also have the peripheral nervous system, and that includes the autonomic nervous system and somatic nervous system. The somatic nervous system is what controls our motor and sensory, and that is voluntary, meaning we have control over it. But then we also have the autonomic nervous system, which means it's involuntary. We don't have control over it, at least consciously. And that autonomic nervous system splits into two other branches, which is the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. And the common way to identify those two is the somatic nervous system is like the fight and flight, and the parasympathetic is the rest and digest. So if you're in a situation where it's fight or flight, your somatic nervous system is going to kick in, and it's going to increase those functions that you need to best help you in a fight or flight situation. And the parasympathetic, when it's rest and digest, it's going to support and increase functions and actions that help your body with digestion and what's the word I'm looking for? Not rehabilitation, but kind of, I don't know, regeneration maybe. But yeah, rest and digest, parasympathetic, fight and flight, somatic nervous system. That's what's important. So first, we're going to start with this diagram. Let me make sure I have all of it, this picture. This one's in the book. And I like it because it shows us the origin of the nerves in the somatic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system, and also where their destination is. And so this side over here is going to be the somatic nervous system, fight or flight. Over here we're going to have the PNS, the parasympathetic nervous system. So here we have the spinal cord. It's broken up to cervical, thoracic, lumbar, sacral. And then on each side we have the chain ganglia. And then over here, we're not going to worry about the chain ganglia, so we just have the spinal cord pretty much split up into the same segments. A little bit different over here, but I'll talk about it when I get to it. But first, for this sympathetic nervous system, they're going to come from like T1 down to L2. So that's where they're going to originate from the spinal cord in this section. So T1 to T12 and L1 and L2. And there's another little split right here at T5 and T6. And this upper section, T1 through T5, that is what is going to innervate the organs above the diaphragm. This line right here, this blue and red line, that represents the diaphragm. So it's going to innervate the lungs and the heart. And when it comes from here, it's going to come from the spinal cord. It's going to go to the chain ganglia. It's going to synapse. And then you're going to have another one that's going to come out, and it's going to innervate the organ, for example, the lungs. You're going to have another one come out. It's going to synapse in the chain ganglia, and then it's going to innervate the heart, for example. So all these ones, T1 through T5, they're going to innervate everything in the body cavity above the diaphragm. And another important thing is, we'll talk about it a little bit more later, but for the preganglionic neurons, they're going to be myelinated. Postganglionic neurons are unmyelinated. Yeah, but that brings us to T6 to L2. And these ones are going to come out, go to the chain ganglia, but they're not going to synapse there. They're going to come out and they're going to go to this other spot called the collateral ganglia, and they're actually going to synapse there, and then they're going to go innervate the organs in the body cavity below the diaphragm. And again, like these other ones, postganglionic is unmyelinated, myelinated, and preganglionic is myelinated. Let me see. Yeah, then we also have spinal nerves, where they're again gonna come from all along T1 through L2, and they're gonna come out, synapse in the chain ganglia, and then they're gonna go to more the peripheral, and they're gonna synapse in these spots. Synapse, chain ganglia, go to their spots, synapse, chain ganglia, innervate those peripheral regions. So yeah, for the sympathetic nervous system, spinal nerves innervate the muscles, the hair muscles, it causes your hair to stand up. It's gonna innervate the sweat glands, and it's gonna innervate blood vessels. And you can see over here, I haven't drawn it yet, but these three things are not going to be innervated by the PNS, the parasympathetic nervous system. And so it's important to remember when you're thinking of different situations and you have different symptoms, that these three things will only be affected by the SNS, not by the PNS. So yeah, T1 through T5, sympathetic nerves. Above that, they're gonna innervate above the diaphragm, heart and lungs. T6 through L2, not gonna synapse in the chain ganglia, but gonna synapse in the collateral ganglia, and they're gonna synapse below the diaphragm, the organs below the diaphragm. So they're gonna synapse all these guys. Stomach, pancreas, GI tract, kidney. There's probably other ones I don't really know. But another one too, I don't know where exactly it comes from this section of the thoracic area, but there's another one that comes out, and it innervates the adrenal, what's it called? Medulla, and that's gonna cause the release of epinephrine and norepinephrine into the blood. And that one, it doesn't synapse. Yeah, again, I'm not sure exactly where it comes from within this area, but it's gonna come. Not gonna synapse in the chain ganglia, not gonna synapse in this collateral, but just go straight and innervate and synapse in the adrenal medulla of the kidney. We'll mention a little bit more over here. But another thing that's important to mention that I forgot is the ones that synapse in the collateral ganglia, those are called splanchnic nerves. And so that's a splanchnic nerve. It doesn't synapse in the chain ganglia, but in the collateral. For the PNS, it's gonna be innervated, or like it's gonna originate from, I think it's spinal nerve, no? Can't remember the name, but it's nerve 5 or the vagus nerve. Oh, cranial nerve. Cranial nerve 5 or the vagus nerve. And this one's gonna come out, and it has a longer pre-ganglionic neuron, and it's gonna come pretty much almost to the organ. Then you're gonna have a small post or a short post ganglionic neuron, neuron, and then it's gonna synapse either right just before the organ or it will do it inside it. And that's gonna come out and it's gonna do, like we said, the lungs, it's gonna come out, it's gonna do the heart, it's gonna come down, it's also gonna do the stomach, it's gonna do the pancreas, it's gonna do all of these as well. And so this one is not worried about above or below the diaphragm like we were over here. This one's just gonna do all of it within the body cavity. And I don't know if we talked about this in class, but in the video I was watching, talked about it. In S2, S3, and S4 also will come out, and it will just get a bottom part of the GI tract, and it will also get the urinary tract, at least part of it, the bladder. But yeah, so it's a small section, there's just like a couple little ones down here, but the majority, pretty much all of it, comes from cranial nerve number 5 or the vagus nerve. And again, it has a longer preganglionic neuron and a shorter postganglionic neuron, and it goes almost to the organ, or it can actually go into it and innervate it with a postganglionic neuron, but yeah. And with this one, I honestly can't remember if, I'm pretty sure I'll have to look at it. It's something I'll have to look at. Myelinated post-ganglionic neuron. I know these ones are, no, they are. So yeah, I remember. So yeah, still preganglionic neurons, myelinated. Postganglionic neurons, not myelinated, but the postganglionic neurons on the PNS are just shorter. So yeah, that's where like the originations are, and that's where they innervate. Any questions? Okay, sounds good. Yeah, and again, I was gonna jump back to this. The PNS doesn't have doesn't go to any of these three, just to the body cavity. Yeah, and this is pretty much the same diagram or same picture, just drawn a little bit differently. I'm still gonna go through it just because it'll help me know it better. But yeah, so we still have SNS, PNS, that vagus cranial nerve number 5 we talked about. We still have the spinal, sympathetic nerves, splanchnic nerve, and the adrenal medulla. So yeah, we'll draw it again. So it's gonna come from the nerve, the spinal cord. Let's do the sympathetic first. It's gonna come, synapse in the chain ganglia. And it's gonna come down, and innervate above the diaphragm. And again, this one's gonna be myelinated like we talked about. Let me go with a different color. I only have 3 colored markers here. Let's use blue again for the splanchnic. So yeah, this one was sympathetic splanchnic nerve we talked about. It's gonna come out of here. It's not gonna synapse in the chain ganglia, but instead it's gonna come down, synapse, collateral ganglia, and then it's gonna go and innervate its organ, myelinated. Yeah, below the diaphragm. And this is splanchnic nerve. Once again, it's gonna do below the diaphragm. Synapses in the collateral ganglia. Now, let's do the spinal nerve. Spinal nerves come out of the spinal cord. Synapse in the chain ganglia. Then go to the peripheral and do these bad boys down here. Again, we mentioned it's the blood vessels, the hair muscle that causes the hair to stand up, or like goosebumps, and what's the last one? I'm trying to think about it without looking. Yeah, blood vessels. Oh, the sweat glands. Okay. Now let's do, we already talked about the adrenal medulla. That one's just gonna come out, spinal cord, chain ganglia. It's just gonna skip. It's not gonna go through synapse into the collateral. Just gonna go straight to the adrenal medulla. And that's the one that causes the release of norepinephrine, epinephrine into the blood. Yeah, it's just right on top of the kidney. But yeah, that one is just one long one. I don't think it even has a post or pre-synaptic neuron. I think it's just one. And that's one thing I forgot to mention. I don't know if I mentioned it with the somatic nervous system. That one just is one neuron. These ones have two, except for this one, I guess. The adrenal medulla. Last one is we have the vagus nerve, number 5. And like we mentioned, it has a long presynaptic, presynaptic nerve. That one's just gonna get like right before or into the organ and then have its post-synaptic neuron. And this one doesn't really care about the whether it's above or below the diaphragm. It's just gonna do everything within the body cavity. And SNS does the peripheral over here, does the body cavity, but sympathetic neurons do above the diaphragm. Splanchnic nerves go to the collateral and do below the diaphragm. So yeah, just another picture. Then we're gonna come over here and get this chair out of the way. Make sure we can see everything. That covers it pretty good. Okay. So for this one, this is gonna go a little more in depth of the neurons. Kind of a lot. Let's see. So we have SNS, PNS. PNS, it's a little more simple. Preganglionic neuron, gonna release acetylcholine, and that's gonna do the synapse at N2. Start the synapse again with action potential. It's gonna run it down where it's gonna get to the actual target, whether it's the organ, and that organ's going to have a specific receptor. And the receptors for the PNS are M1, N2, M2, M3, M4, M5. Before we talk about receptors and stuff, all of the preganglionic neurons or presynaptic neurons with the SNS and the PNS, they're all going to be cholinergic. And what that means is they're going to release acetylcholine. And those are these blue dots. Sorry, not that one. Presynaptic. The blue dots, this one, they're all releasing acetylcholine. That's the chemical they're releasing. And because they're all releasing acetylcholine, they are cholinergic. But also, they're going to have an N2 receptor. It's a ligand receptor, ligand-gated receptor. And that acetylcholine, when it gets released from this neuron, it's going to get over here to this cell body, or this neuron, and it's going to hit a ligand receptor, and it's going to open the gate and let in positive ion, and that's how it's going to start the next action potential to keep the signal moving down. But yeah, these are all N2 ligand receptors. N2 ligand receptor, even right here, it's releasing acetylcholine. This is the adrenal medulla, and the one that we talked about releases epinephrine. It's like right on the kidney, releases epinephrine into the blood, and that's going to be an N2 receptor right on that adrenal medulla. But yeah, so all the presynaptic are cholergenic, and they release acetylcholine, and that acetylcholine goes to an N2 receptor. The postsynaptic neurons are a little different. So first we'll start out with the PNS. This one's still cholinergic. It's still going to release acetylcholine, but the receptors are going to be these M2, M1 through M5 receptors for their targets. For the sweat glands, postganglionic is also going to be cholinergic, and it's going to release acetylcholine, and the sweat glands are going to have receptors that are M1 or M3. And this one's just one, kind of look at it as a presynaptic neuron, but yeah. The only different one is the postsynaptic neuron for the SNS, for most of the SNS, besides the sweat glands and those other ones. It's going to be adrenergic, and what that means is that it's releasing, I want to say norepinephrine, and it's releasing that chemical, and for the targets, its receptors are going to be alpha 1, alpha 2, beta 1, beta 2, and beta 3. So alphas and the betas, alpha and beta receptors. And the target for the adrenergic, for these neurons with the adrenaline, the norepinephrine, with the beta 1 and alpha receptors, you're going to have the heart, the lungs, smooth muscle, blood vessels, and the localized sweat glands. Those are all going to involve alpha and beta receptors that receive norepinephrine. Generalized sweat glands, localized sweat glands, like ones in your hands and feet. General sweat glands are not those ones. And you already kind of talked about it, M1, M3. target down here for these ones, the PNS, is the same as we talked about over there. It's gonna do the whole body cavity. Important thing we talked about in class was this guy right here. This is an enzyme that eats or breaks down, more like probably breaks down the acetylcholine. And that enzyme is going to be found in all the ones that have the acetylcholine. All right there. For the adrenergic, for the one with norepinephrine, that one's going to have MAO. Can't remember what it stands for, but that one's going to be the enzyme that breaks down norepinephrine. Another important thing is with these receptors, we talked about in class, evens are going to inhibit or be inhibitory, and the odds are going to be excitatory or excite. So we'll do an example. If we have the heart, and pretty sure it's beta 1 that does the heart for the SNS. For the PNS, I want to say it's M1. I'm like 95% sure that's what it is. So we're going to have, from the SNS, we're going to have beta 1, and from the PNS, we're going to have M1. So, when you're in a fight and flight situation, or fight or flight situation, your body's going to want to kick into SNS to help your body react effectively. So for example, with the heart, SNS is going to kick into gear, going to do these synapses, norepinephrine is going to get released. In this situation, beta 1 receptor is going to pick that up, and on the heart, because there's a neuron going to the heart, and it's going to release that norepinephrine. And since it's beta 1, we talked about the odds are excitatory. Beta 1, it's excitatory. It's going to get the heart rate going up. It's going to excite the heart. Because SNS, that's what we want it to do. We want the heart rate to go up. In this situation, you're going to want more blood flow, more oxygen going to your muscles and to your whole body. But at the same time, you're going to have you're going to have you're gonna have like different even receptors from here. They're gonna go to stuff in your rest and digest portion, like your digestive system, like your stomach, and it's gonna use these even ones. They're gonna inhibit. I don't know exactly which ones go to it, but they're gonna inhibit the rest and digest from happening, so we can kick in the SNS. Not sure if that's 100%. I don't know which ones of these go to there, but let's do another one. PNS. Let's say we're resting at home, or rest and digest. Your body wants to digest or rest. It's gonna go through this. And let's say the same neuron is going to go to the heart at M1. It's going to go to the heart. And since we're in rest and digest, it's going to excite M1, which is going to decrease heart rate. I think it's M1. But yeah, the rule is odds excite, evens inhibit. But yeah, that's all I got. Trying to think if there's anything else I want to explain. I think that about sums it up. Probably some stuff I'm missing, but I'll study it more later. Thanks for watching. Again, that's essay question number 3 for Unit 1. Thanks for watching.